Father's Day, everyone. So thank you, Janine, Haley, Ben, for joining me up here. Yeah, let's give them a big round of applause. Big cheer, come on, you better. You may have noticed they're not all dads, and there's a reason for that. That's because today we thought we'd try and give a couple of perspectives on dads. And so I did invite Janine and Haley and Ben to join me as we try and share a few stories, give a few perspectives on dads. I'd like to start, though, with something that happened at Adult Connect about a month and a half ago. We'll talk about relationships, and we had a look at Jesus and God's relationship and what the Father does, the Son does. And so it's from the Message. I just want to read part of John 5, and this is kind of like the start, the inspiration for our talk today. So I'm reading John chapter 5 from verse 19 to 24 in the Message. It's happened just after Jesus has healed a man on the Sabbath, and the Jewish leaders are plotting to how they can kill him. And so what the Father does, the Son does. So Jesus explained himself at length. I'm telling you this straight. The Son can't independently do a thing, only what he sees the Father doing. What the Father does, the Son does. The Father loves the Son and includes him in everything he is doing. But you haven't seen the half of it yet. For in the same way that the Father raises the dead and creates life, so does the Son. The Son gives life to anyone he chooses. Neither he nor the Father shuts anyone out. The Father handed all authority to judge over to the Son, so that the Son will be honoured equally with the Father. Anyone who dishonours the Son dishonours the Father, for it was the Father's decision to put the Son in the place of honour. It's urgent that you listen carefully to this. Anyone who believes what I'm saying right now and aligns himself with the Father, who has in fact put me in charge, has at this very moment the real lasting life and is no longer condemned to be an outsider. This person has taken a giant step from the world of the dead to the world of the living. The thing that struck me about that passage as we read it and talked about it was the amazing trust between the Father and the Son in that. And it's that idea of trust that I kind of wanted to pick up on today. And there's a whole lot in that passage that I love, but this idea of trust between the Father God and the Son Jesus. And today we're going to talk about trust, and we're going to talk about some of our stories. I'm just going to kick it off briefly. I've spoken about my dad before, and when I started thinking about trust with my dad, strangely I thought of his driving. And I'm not sure why this came to mind, because my dad drove a manual for many years. It was a hard clutch, it was hard accelerate, it was hard brake, and it was like as close as you could get to the car in front of you. The day he picked us up after Janine and my wedding, he drove us to the airport. I think Arabella was in the car with us. He went round the corner, and at the first roundabout, he didn't go the right way. He went the wrong way around the roundabout. He just went the wrong way. Luckily, no other cars were coming. Dad probably said something about, what's it matter, who cares? No cars were coming, and just kept going. And so it was a bit about one of those drives where that was the start of the drive, and you're just like clinging on and holding your breath the whole way. But aside from his driving, I had great trust in Dad. He was always there as a rock for me, and he was someone I could always rely on and go back to. Many phone calls, as I've related before to you in my adult life, back to Dad asking for advice. He was always there, always keeping the family safe and secure, always doing his best. I had a great dad. I was really privileged to have this awesome dad, and spent a lot of time with my dad growing up as well, which I love and cherish. So for me, Dad was someone who I could really trust, and that trust gave me a really firm foundation for everything that came next in life. And I think that's a real privilege and honour. And I know it's not everyone's story. And so rather than me just talking about my dad, and maybe through my rose-coloured glasses, I'm not sure, I'm going to invite other people to give us a few different perspectives. Ben, as a young dad, I'm going to ask him to kick it off next, and to talk about his perspective as a young dad with his kids.
Good morning, church. It's funny you mentioned driving, because my dad still drives like a grandpa. He's always pretty safe, but I always found myself holding on to the thing, and then like putting my feet down and going, no, stop, but anyway, that was scary. I can trust my dad's driving too. But what I want to talk about is a little story that happened last week at the beach. And it's pretty simple, and there's a reason for that. But I'll get into it. So we went to the beach at Lighthouse. I don't know what day it was, last week sometime, Claire would know. And we were playing and all the rest of it, and I decided to go for a swim, and then the kids kind of like followed along, of course. So what it was is that, like, it's Lighthouse, so it's a little bit rough and whatever. Lincoln was kind of happy playing up near the shore, and Evie wanted to come out with me. I wasn't deep, I was like knee deep, but that's like crazy for a kid. And it was just the simple act of just putting my hand out, and she held on, and then everything was okay. Like, that's the simple trust that kids have for us as parents. Kind of funny, straight after that, there was a big wave coming, and I like lift Evie up, turn around, and Lincoln's like, oh, I'm like, oh no, okay. So I've grabbed Evie's hand, dragging her behind me. I don't know what's happening to her at the time, but I'm like dragging her, and Lincoln's like drowning. Yeah, the waves were too strong. Yeah, I wasn't paying attention to him. Sorry, buddy. But yeah, anyway, I just picked him up, got Evie in one hand, and yeah, anyway, it was like, yeah, beach day is over. Yeah, superhero. Anxiety. But yeah, that was the end of swimming. But yeah, if Lincoln was there, I would have been holding his hand too, but he's his own child. But yeah, it's just that simplicity of the act of just holding out your hand and your child just grabbing hold of that, and everything's okay. Like, then they're happy to jump in the waves and be there with you. So yeah, that's my little story.
Nice. Thanks, Ben. Yeah. Hayley, obviously not a dad, but I invited you. You have shared a few things about your dad, and I just invited you to tell us a little bit about your relationship and your dad.
Well, my driving experiences with my dad have always been awesome. My dad owned a taxi, and so he's been on the road a lot in his 81 years. And probably the best advice he ever gave me, not only for driving, but to probably take into life, was take it slow as you go over the hill, because you don't know what's on the other side and you need time to react. So, yeah, driving was something Dad taught me very well. I've stayed safe on the road for 30 odd years, praise the Lord. My experience with Dad, very much trust when I was a little girl. He was an incredible father. He worked so hard. He would work 14, 16-hour days. He'd often start at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and not get home until usually around 8:30, 8:45 at night. He was never tired when he came home, or he certainly didn't show it, and my sister and I would clamber to sit on his lap and eat some of his dinner and have a swig of his beer, and some of those nights he'd bring home a mint patty or a golden ruff, and that just made it absolutely awesome. And Dad was involved in a lot of sporting activities. He was a swimmer, he was a golfer, he was a tennis player, and even working all those long days, Dad would take us along to all of those things. And I played tennis with his tennis club on Wednesday nights. I swam with both his swimming clubs on Sundays, and I was his caddy very often for golf. Yeah, I had a brilliant dad. He couldn't have done more for me and my sister as we were growing up. As we hit our teenage years, Dad kind of backed off a little bit more and let us, lead through life with our own thoughts and ideas and make decisions that, we felt were right for us. He really didn't interfere very much at all. He just loved from afar, a lot like God, really. The door was always open, even if we shut it at times in our rebellious times, or, times that we felt we were right and he was wrong. I'd move that one. But the door was always open, and he was a gentleman. Yeah.
Thanks, Hayley. Thanks. Janine, a bit of a different dad experience.
Yeah. So I guess from the other end of the spectrum, I have never really called anybody dad. And he was a man who left when I was a baby, no memory. He was in and out very occasionally, but basically he chose to not live with us. He chose others over us, and and that was that, and that was my experience. And even though Mum remarried at some point, never called him Dad, and even in the year before he died, being sort of reconciled with my father, it never was quite the same to go Dad kind of thing. So never drove with him, but there you go, never. Anyway, but I do have a driving story. Don't know, I do have a driving story. There you go. This wasn't planned. So my sister was one of these. My dad is wonderful. She was older. She was almost 5 when he left, so she had more of a memory of him. So she was always, my dad is wonderful. Why did you leave my dad? Although we never did. He left us. But it was just that little girl perspective of, he was wonderful. He was this superhero. He wasn't, but that was her perspective. Because back then, from a child, you also think, well, he doesn't love me. I wasn't good enough. I'm not enough. It's my fault. It's, all this, and all the blame goes on yourself. All the hurt goes on yourself. And really, it took a lot of years to realise and to fully realise and understand it was his decision, it was his dysfunction, and not my own. Although it affects me, but it was his choices. And so in his choices, in my sister having that different thing, he would send her presents, I would get none. He would come and see her, same town, and I wouldn't even know he was there, and things like that. So that was as a young adult. I had moved to Sydney, was going to Bible college and things like that, but whatever, it was just non-existent relationship. And so one Christmas that really got that, of course it still has effect. It really got to me, and I had gone, thought, forget it, went and visited my old youth group friends, because this is down in Victoria, and my mum then lived out in the bush somewhere, like dirt tracks and, windy roads and all this sort of thing. And I was driving home, having a cry. You shouldn't drive and cry, Yeah, you can't see, yeah. But anyway, and I was just overwhelmed with, how unfair. What a rat bag. How unfair. I was at Bible college, but I still was going, this forgiveness thing was still outworking itself. And I drove around the corner onto the dirt roads. Didn't have an accident or anything. But there was this amazing sunset. It was like all these colours just painted across the sky. I'd go around another bend, completely different set of colours. And this just kept happening for a few kilometres, and it was just like the most amazing sunset, no mobile phone, so you couldn't stop and take a photo, but it was just this brilliant thing. And I felt like I was out in the middle of nowhere. This is for me. And I thought, my Father has given this to me. And I just felt God's presence in the car as I drove, going, I can do anything. I'm your Father. I can do anything. I can give you whatever you want. Here's your present. What do you want? You want the world? Here it is. Right across the sky. I can do anything. And it was actually, as far as that Father heart of God perspective goes, it wasn't, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. It wasn't that I had a crappy father, therefore God is crappy. I didn't think of it like that. I thought, there was this crappy human being over here that didn't want anything to do with me, but God loves me. He didn't reject me. He's for me. He is the wonderful Father that I've always wanted. He was my only dad. He was the one. And I was able to, people used to give me, the Father Heart of God books from back then. You must need this. And I'd look at it and go, I get that. Because it wasn't like, I had found in him what I'd always needed and what I'd always wanted. And so it was great to actually have that, not in a person, but, through working it out, through years, through tears, through, sorting it out, that I had found, that Father. Anyway.
Thanks, Jenny. That's great. Hayley, you have a reflection on God as a Father.
I guess it was pretty easy for me to think of, God as a father being a good God because I had a good dad. I think I've written my dad a few letters over the years, and I've said in each and every one of them, my Father in heaven gave me the best dad on earth. And listening to stories like Janine's, really reminds me how blessed I was. I think one of the things about being a dad and God is that it's that magic combination of loving really tenderly, but at the same time making hard decisions that may hurt you, or may be hard for you to, convictions that are hard for you to live, but they're always good for you. And that's God, and that's a good dad.
Nice, thank you. Ben, how about yourself, mate? Simple trust?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, back to simple trust. Just kind of like expanding on that. I'm 31, so I feel like I have a little bit of wisdom in life to say what I'm about to say. But what happens as an adult is that your trust is probably going to be a fair bit more involved than just grabbing hold of someone's hand. All right, you're in control, take my life type thing. But what happens is like past experiences, possibly some sort of cynicism or like logical thinking or analysing the situation, like all these things kind of get involved. You have this filter of trust before you can trust someone. And actually I think that does really complicate trust, and I think that's actually a good thing when it comes to other people. But what I kind of wanted to bring home today is that I really believe that we need to take that approach of the simplistic trust when it comes to God. Have no filter. If you believe in His word and believe the promises, I've got a couple of scriptures here. He has plans to prosper you. Jeremiah 29:11, that He will give you a new strength to overcome. In Isaiah 40:11. And all the promises throughout the word, just simply trust God. It is a challenge, but we just put up so many filters because of people. To break those down and trust God simply, I think that's a pretty awesome goal to have. And I guess I've kind of done that this year with uni, because I've left work basically. I work one day a week. It's actually pretty cool. To be able to do that, and I haven't had any fear or doubts or anything like that. I probably joked about it a few times, but I haven't had any doubts, and I don't know how. I honestly couldn't explain how we've gone from week to week and all the rest of it, but God's got it. Somehow we're just living, and it's awesome. Yeah, Claire can testify to that. But yeah, simple.
Yeah, that's great, thanks. I was actually reflecting on that, something similar this morning about what you were saying about all those experiences, and I was talking to Janine about it and saying my trust in my dad came from all my experiences. And then Janine was saying to me about trust in God comes from your faith, and I think that's very, very true. There's a lot of experience in there, but often, even with my dad's driving, I don't understand the experience. I don't know what's going on at the time. I still trusted him to drive my daughter home that afternoon. And I think often that's the case in my own trying to reason or work out what's going on in this world, what's going on in my life. I just can't think like God. I know I can't. And so my trust in God is born of faith, and it's born out of His word, out of His scripture, out of my prayers, out of seeing my prayers answered. It's born out of all that, and it's that trust in God that my dad no longer with me, but I still have my trust in God. I still have that rock for my life that I can build it on, that I can settle it on. Yet the Father heart of God, that's right, yeah. And I think, the way Janine spoke about that was just awesome, because I know that everyone's perspective is not the same. We don't all have the same type of dad growing up. That Father heart of God, it's such a great thing. And Michelle this morning prayed before church. I love the prayer. It was that where you don't have that as an earthly father, I'm paraphrasing Michelle, forgive me, but where you don't have that as an earthly father, that God's love will come in and fill that heart, that place in your heart, that Father heart of God. And I think it's a great thing to have. I think it's an awesome thing that God's love is for everyone. It's for all of us, and it gives us such a rock to build our life on. So, yeah. Thank you to Janine and Hayley and Ben. Thanks for sharing.